find any reference to non-Ahmadi Muslims as non-Muslims. There is a very clear demarcation we have been making throughout. Non-Muslims are called non-Muslims. That is, those who profess any other faith than Islam, and those who declare Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam erroneously and unfortunately to be an impostor. They don't believe in him. All Christians, all Sikhs, all Hindus, everyone who sticks to a certain faith and does not believe in Hazur Akram sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Only such people are called non-Muslims by Ahmadis. The rest are the Muslims who have rejected Hazrat Imam Mahdi, and out of their own committed profession, they should be treated as kafirs within Islam, of course. They believe in Hazur sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but do not believe in the promised Messiah and in the Mahdi. So their kufr is not imposed upon them by us. It is a kufr of their own commitment and a positive commitment. So when we say kafir, we positively mean a kafir within the four walls of Islam, who has denied in the promised Messiah, in the truth of the promised Messiah, and rejected Imam Mahdi. Now, in this regard, there is absolutely no difference between us and them, in the sense that they also hold the same belief. All the non-Ahmadi scholars positively believe that whenever Imam Mahdi comes, whoever would reject him would immediately become kafir. So they have left us absolutely no choice, whether they like it or not like it. The choice for Ahmadis now is just this: either to declare that we do not believe in Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam, or to declare because we believe in him to be the true promised Messiah, true Mahdi, so we must automatically believe that you are his kafirs, and in that sense, ultimately, the kafir of Islam, because in that, not directly, indirectly, you will still remain Muslim because Hazrat, you believe in the book. You will still remain Muslim as you believe in Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But you are differentiating between those who are sent by Allah. It's a very big crime, and this leads to kufr within the four walls of Islam. So they remain Muslims. They are not to be subjected to the category of Ahle Kitab, which is a different category. All the Ahle Kitabs referred to by the Holy Quran are non-Muslim Ahle Kitab, and these are Muslim Ahle Kitab. So don't call them Ahle Kitab. This is insulting to them, and it's against their belief. Yes, please.
Why this division is Ahle Kitab and non-Ahle Kitab? What affects it in our daily life? Sometimes we don't know.
Yes. The difference is that there are pagans, for instance, those who do not believe in the authority of Allah ever having been revealed to them in the form of a book. And they follow their own personal likings and dislikings. The decision lies with them or with their forefathers, and they attribute those decisions not to God but to either imaginary idols or to their living forefathers who lived in history sometimes before them. So in either case, they do not draw the authority for modeling their life from any book revealed by Allah. On the other hand, there are Ahl Kitab whose history can be traced back to some revealed book. So a differentiation is to be made between these two. Despite the fact that Ahl Kitab themselves, by the passage of time, have got corrupted in their philosophy of life, in their actions, in everything. Yet the Holy Quran makes a distinction. It says originally they have been right, so they should not be treated as totally false. And they should be preferred over those who do not belong to any book revealed by Allah. In what way? The Holy Quran makes itself very clear. In your relationships, in your eating together, in your social contacts, in so many ways. They are preferred to the pagans. Yes, please.
A few days ago, I saw on the news that doctors in the future will be able to predict whether a child who's going to be born is going to be severely deformed or not. In that case, could the parents get an abortion, or is that not allowed under Islam?
Not for this selection. For medical reasons, abortion is permitted, but to not to make choices. This I personally don't like it, but this matter has to be further investigated. As far as the Holy Quran goes, it is clear on one thing, that abortion is not permitted if you are afraid of paucity of food or means of livelihood. لا تقتلوا أولادكم من خشية إملاق. Do not kill your offspring, your children, for the fear of lack of food or shortage of food. That is positively declared haram, forbidden. And there are other reasons for which birth control is applied. They are permissible. But the state which you are telling me is not a state of birth control. It is almost amounting to murder. So if murder is permitted in the uterus, you can further extend it and have the boy murdered after being born. The prevention is a different thing altogether. When life has not come in contact with the other life, that is, the genes of the two sexes have not mended into one child, before that everything is permissible. But after this, only for the medical reasons, because the principle laid down by Islam is this, that the life which has come into being and has flourished already, it has a better right than a possible life. Comparatively, it has the possibility of life has less chances. So if their interests clash, then the life which has already got established, it should be preferred. So this is why if there are health hazards, then all mothers are within their rights to get the abortion. But for the choice of sex, I simply can't accept this. And further investigations could be made. Pardon? Pardon?
If in the doctor's opinion, the child is going to be deformed.
No, he said sex.
Deformed.
I'm awfully sorry. Deformity again, that has gone closer to the borderline. You see? So it all depends, because I think most deformed children also pose some sort of hazard for their mothers. And I know positively in many cases, because the child was deformed, his delivery was not normal, and the mother almost